Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I am so happy to be hosting this session for you.
Alrighty, we will go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all to the 2024 UCR Staff Conference. We're so thrilled to have you join us today. In case you've never attended an event or you haven't had the opportunity to pop into other sessions on Zoom events, just so you know, each session is being recorded and will be posted on UCR's learning management system within the next couple of weeks. If you would like closed captions for this session, all you have to do is click on the show caption, closed caption button at the bottom of the screen. While we can use the chat to interact, I do ask that you submit your questions using the Q&A feature. That way we have a more streamlined area to answer those questions. You also have the opportunity to upvote different questions so that they get answered more quickly. And then let's give it just a little bit to make sure everybody's coming in. And today we are very pleased to have Miss Tanya Wine join us for this session. Tanya Wine has worked in higher education for the past 27 years. She began her career as a work-study student while finishing her undergraduate degree working in the College of Business and Public Administration at Cal State San Bernardino. Since moving to UCR, she has worked in the Bournes College of Engineering, the Graduate Division, the Anderson Graduate School of Management before coming to CHAS, which is the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences, where she has served as the Academic Resources Manager and now serves as the Divisional FAO for the Multidisciplinary Unit and Performing Arts Departments as part of the Dean's Office Finance team. She also currently serves as the Director of Administration for Staff Assembly and the current Vice President of LEAD. So she is representing two of the groups that are hosting this conference for you today. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Tanya while I share her slides.
Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you being here and supporting Staff Assembly and LEAD and HR and just supporting our campus in general. I am so happy and thrilled to be here. I love supporting staff in my role. That's why I continue to volunteer for all the things that we are allowed to volunteer for. Oops. That was an unintended consequence having my phone go off. Sorry, I've just silenced that. So thank you again so very much. Brittany is going to be running through my slide deck for me while I go. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today that is part of that I have tried to incorporate in my management style is really getting to know yourself and your staff and the other people that you work with and looking at the ways that they learn different things as we are all going through this Impact 23, I guess I can say situation. It has become very apparent to myself and probably others that everybody kind of has a different style in the way that they view things and how they learn. And so I think it is important as a leader and somebody that people look to ensure that the people that work with you or under you or are in your supervision line or care, that they are able to receive and understand the information that you are providing to them. And sometimes that takes an additional amount of work on your part to ensure that they can see and understand and comprehend what it is that they need to do so that they can become successful in doing their job. Okay, Brittany, next slide, please. Okay, and why is looking at their learning style important? Why is this important in general? One of the critical things is because the way we learn looks at how we interpret the world around us, which in turn involves how we communicate with people, either others that are part of our staff or outside of our staff, it becomes a critical piece of communication and how we relate to the world when we take in information and when we provide information to others. We want to ensure that we give them a chance and make sure that they understand either expectations, which can be related to performance improvement. It can help motivation and it can demotivate people. And you want to ensure that there is engagement. And one of the ways you can do that is ensuring that they receive all of the information in a way that is most comfortable to them so that they can do the job that they need to do. And so as a leader, one of the things that really would be helpful is looking at how you're communicating with your staff or your co-workers, making sure that what you're saying is communicated in a way that helps them understand what they need. It also ensures that they remain engaged because you're providing information to them that is critical to their job or to their life in general and their health and well-being. And one of the things that I think is also important is when you're thinking about how to communicate with people and how you want to be communicated with back, if you don't create a place that is safe psychologically for somebody to share the fact that they are a visual learner or an audible learner and they are not understanding. Maybe it's the way the delivery is. And so we need to ensure that we create a space that is psychologically safe for people to share how you're communicating and how they're interpreting what you're communicating or trying to communicate with them. So really, the importance of this is critical to ensure that you have a working team, that you can lead your team, and that everybody feels that they're on the same page and that nobody is being left behind because they're not understanding what you're trying to say, because the way they see the world or the way they're interpreting the situation or the instructions is not the way that they best understand it. So it is a critical piece of information. It really does help build confidence. It ensures that your staff remain engaged. It can help performance improvement if you really take the time to learn how to communicate with your staff better or how they would like to be communicated with, because people learn things in different ways. And again, I think that it helps with their mental health and well-being, knowing that you took the time to really try to get them to understand on a level that makes them comfortable. You really have to be able to meet them where they are. And so sometimes that does require you to shift the way that you would normally communicate or the way you like to be communicated with to ensure that you meet them where they are. Next slide, Brittany. Click. Is that an aardvark? No, that is not an aardvark. For all of my UCI graduates, former employees, this is actually a giant anteater. And at UCI, his name is Pete, the anteater. And so Brittany, if you click again. One more, yeah. There's Pete, and this is an aardvark. It kind of looks like a kind of a strange pig with big giant ears. And it's not necessarily the aardvark that's important to this story, but what is important is, go ahead and click, Brittany. Aardvark, I had to find a way to associate with something to remember the 4 types of learning, and aardvark was the closest thing I could come up with. So go ahead, Brittany. So there are 4 types of learning. There is visual learning, There is auditory learning. There is read and write learning. And there is kinesthetic. And the theory is called VARK, which is why I had to come up with a way to memorize that I used aardvark. So, and I just want to say for the people that are probably academic advisors, maybe if you were a child psychology major or you're in education, please don't come after me. This is a very high level. This is a very high level overview. And I am not an expert in any way, but one of the things that I have had to develop in my own leadership style is trying to find a way that allows me to truly relate with my staff and my coworkers in a way that is beneficial for them and for me so that I can communicate to them the information that they need and they can, and it just makes everything better. So it's very, very clear. So again, the 4 types of learning called VARK is visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic. There are actually a lot more, but these are the 4 basic types where all of the others kind of derive from. So there are about 15 specifically identified types of learning, but they all kind of stem from these 4. Okay, Brittany, you can go to the next slide. So I kind of wanted to touch on some of the characteristics of each of these. So if you have not created the kind of relationship you have with your staff where you feel comfortable asking them, or you haven't created that psychological safety, or you have a new staff member, some of these things you can probably gain from your observation of working with your staff. Maybe they have told you that, oh, I'm a visual learner, or oh, I'm auditory. So I kind of wanted to go over some of the characteristics to help you maybe identify if your staff hasn't shared with you what type of learner they are. So some of the characteristics of a visual learner is they are great observers. They take in almost everything around them visually through their eyes. They have the ability to take in a lot of, it's very quick when they do it because your eyes are immediately able to see things and your brain is processing things at a very high rate. And as such, they are very quick learners. And by quick, I mean, they can look at a picture and identify it and make sense of it. And that is how they learn things. They have to see it in order to learn it. And one of the big advantages of being a visual learner is you can process pictures so much quicker than text, because when your brain processes text, it has to process it in a sequential way. Whereas you look at a picture, you see it all at once and your brain processes this whole entire group of things and it just takes it in. Because the brain is quicker to interpret a picture, it creates a very strong memory, and people recall things by memory. Like I use the aardvark to remember the 4 types of learning, VARK, V-A-R-K. So now I will never forget that because now I've committed it to memory. And it makes for visual learners, if you have a picture or a diagram or an informatic or things like that, it makes sometimes a very hard concept much easier to learn because you've mapped it out and they can see it. They can follow a process. It's all there. It's just a picture. So that really is an advantage if you're working with visual learners. Okay, next slide. So some of the characteristics of an audio learner is obviously they're great listeners. And like visual learners, because they're hearing and processing data or information or words very, very quickly, they comprehend information quickly. And because of the information that they're comprehending through their senses, the input goes right into memory. And I have to tell you a story. So I have been, early in my life, I was identified as being musically inclined. I am not sure that my junior high and high school music teachers would agree with that, but you took a test in grade school and I started playing the clarinet. I don't know if any of you have ever suffered through lessons with the clarinet, but it's a very interesting thing and I do not regret it. But one of the things that I learned very early in my life, and one of the differences between a visual learner and an audio learner is I can read music, but I cannot sight read music. I cannot look at a sheet of music and go across the page and figure out the rhythm. I just have never been able to do that. That is not a skill that I have or have developed. But if I hear it first, then I was able to play it. I can read the notes and recognizes what the notes are, which is, that's how you read music, but I could never visually look at it and just read the rhythm without hearing it first. So I always felt like that was kind of a disadvantage. So I did not pursue a career in music. And I did later go on to also include the piccolo and the flute and the saxophone in my repertoire in the event anybody wants to hire me for parties. Just kidding, I don't do that anymore. But I do still have my flute from junior high and high school. So again, one of the advantages of audio learning is it's very easy because you're listening to get data, because there's always stimulus and there's always noise. And so it's very easy to get data and you can recognize it and process it very quickly. So an audio learner really takes that in quick. And I use my example of not being able to sight read, but hearing it and then could play it. Also, being an audio learner, it does allow for greater flexibility because you can see it. And then if you also hear it, it also helps get it going into your brain and into your memory, and it just goes in there and stays. And there is less reliance on technology because if you can hear it versus see it on a PowerPoint presentation, like when you're giving a presentation, if people hear it, like your staff, they can still consume and understand. So they're not reliant on technology as much to get the learning that they need. All right, next slide. So the characteristics of a read and write learner, the read write learners are really the people who tend to really take notes, and they prefer to make notes versus really rely on images to take in information. They like to read to understand. They tend to read out loud a lot. They would prefer to have a book in front of them versus an audio book. Like if it's my choice, I would prefer to have a book in front of me, even if it's on my Kindle, versus an audio book. I tried to listen to Dante's Divine Comedy in my car, and I just could not do it. I just could not do it because I could not pay attention. It's probably because I was in my car, but and don't do that. I don't recommend that. But some people can do it, and those are the audio learners, and I'm actually kind of jealous of that. But they do read for comprehension, and they usually have to take notes in order to commit it to memory. So when you are working with read, write learners, you really need to adjust your style. They would like to have handouts. It's important that they have handouts. It's important that they have maybe screenshots because they need to see it and they need to write it down and print it out. So I know that we are trying to be more conscious and more sustainable, but for the read write learners, it is really critical that they have some of their materials in writing. So please keep that in mind when you are working with them. Or if you see one of your staff members that usually always is either taking notes in a class or wants the handouts, please allow them to do that. And by doing that, you would give them that psychological safety to know that it's okay, that people don't always learn in the same way. So this is one of the things that would be required of them to do that. So, and an advantage of reading, writing, learning, they're very organized and they like handouts. So as a leader, this would be a staff member that if we're having a staff meeting and you need somebody to take notes during a meeting, these are the people that you get. These are the people that you want taking notes for you during a meeting, because that is how they learn better and they translate it better. And they would probably definitely take better notes than I would in a meeting. So please keep that in mind. This may seem kind of archaic, like versus an audio learner or a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner, but these are the workhorses. They will do this. They love to do this. They like to see it. They will type up notes. Once they have it typed up, they will continue to make notes and they will refer back to the notes. And in order to help them, they need to convey and understand complex concepts in writing. So they will be the ones that need email. They will be the ones that need a desk manual. They will be the ones that you need to go to a website and perhaps print things out for them so that they can see it in writing. And then it'll be much easier for them, because what they do is they translate the visual images that may be easier for some of us to process, and they need to see it in text because they need to see it in writing, or they need to write it out for further understanding. So sometimes when you're doing a visual presentation, if you're doing it in a big group, these are the people that can translate visual images into text, whereas visual learners find that very slow and tedious. And so in looking at this, this is also a disadvantage. Use these learning style strengths to help your whole team. So that's part of this concept too. Okay, next slide. Okay, the characteristics of a kinesthetic learner. Now, this one was kind of an unfamiliar territory for me until I really started looking into it and trying to figure out, is any member of my staff this? How can I help a kinesthetic learner? And these learners tend to be very tactile. They like hands-on learning. They have a preference to experience what they learn, and they learn by doing. And one of the things that I have found is an advantage for kinesthetic learning, and one way that can help kinesthetic learners on your team is through Zoom. So when you share screen and you're watching them go through a problem, you can walk them through it while they're doing it. So you're instructing them, but they're actually going through and doing it. And so that really feeds into the need for tactile and doing and solving the problems there. So I find that Zoom or even Teams is a great way to work with kinesthetic learners, because in order for them to learn, they really need to be doing it. And again, one of the advantages to that is they enjoy new tasks and stretch assignments, because once you give them instructions, they go in and they figure it out. They are very willing to just continue to go. They like to take things apart. They like to see how it works. They like to try and break the system, and they enjoy stretch assignments because they want to learn new things, and they find it's a much more dynamic learning environment for them if they get these stretch assignments and continue to try and figure out how things are working and how it's going. They, as a kinesthetic learner, they actually require less direction when assigning the tasks, because their type of learning, they just jump into it. They're not afraid to make mistakes. That's how they learn. They learn by doing it, making mistakes, and trying to be better every single time. So they go in and out and trying to do this. And if in any way possible, when you are working with a kinesthetic learner, try to add movement into work tasks. And that could be just getting up, walking around, and having a team talk about a situation that you're having, because movement also commits it to memory. And while you're walking, because we all should be getting out and walking more, as Hung will tell you, in our wellness healthy campus, we need to be out and getting walks. And we have a great park-like setting that would allow for us to do that. So kinesthetic learners enjoy adding movement to their work tasks, which could be taking walks and discussing problems just while you're out walking. Okay, go ahead, Brittany. And then one of the things that I want to emphasize as a leader is you need to take care of your learners. And by that, I mean, we really need to allow our learners to take breaks often. We are constantly being bombarded by data, either visually, or we hear it, or it comes into our office and it impacts us in some way. So please be mindful when we are in a learning situation, we are in a learning environment, not only as students because we are in higher education, but every day we are learning new things about our job, new things about people. And with these new things comes this kind of insecurity about, do I know enough? I didn't hear what they said. What if they find out I don't know how to do this? The other thing is ask questions and be sure you keep them engaged. And when you do ask questions and you are trying to keep your staff engaged, make sure that you are considering how they learn versus how you like to get information. Study your staff. Some of them, if you have created a psychologically safe environment, some people will share how they want to learn. You are certainly welcome to ask if you feel comfortable. When we're in a meeting together, how is it that you prefer to learn? How do you like to get information? Do you prefer it by email? Do you want to have a Teams meeting? Do you want to learn how to do this and we'll share your screen and I'll walk you through? Or do you want me to show you and I'll walk through and then you can try it? So, and especially with this Impact 23, because it is affecting almost every single job on this campus in some way, we have all had to learn new systems. And even if you're not involved in Impact 23, you have to learn new systems and you have to learn new ways of doing things. And so we should be kind of constantly aware of the messages that we're sending out and how people are receiving, and making sure that they're able to understand the things that we were saying and how it works for them, making sure that they get the point, making sure that we don't leave anybody behind that does not understand what they're doing, because we don't want that. One of the ways I have found that I am able to engage with my staff is I'm a big storyteller. I love to tell stories. And usually when I'm telling things, as you can tell with my musical situation, I like to tell stories. Stories are ways that help people relate to you as a leader, because people need to understand that even though you are a leader, you're still human, and that you do have stories, and that you are definitely not perfect. I am definitely not perfect. And I tell my staff that every day, and they forgive me for the mistakes that I make. But part of that is being able to relate to you. And so by telling them stories, and they don't always have to be personal, they have an experience that they can relate. And a lot of the times people recall those stories when they're working and be like, oh yeah, I remember so-and-so said this the other day, and this trick really worked for them. So when you give them stories, it helps them be able to recount what you're is in trying to tell them, because they will remember the story. The other thing is making eye contact. When you are in a situation where you really want to help people learn, make sure that you engage them by keeping eye contact with them. It is really an incredibly helpful tool, and it really means a lot when people understand that you are seeing them, that you are hearing them, and they can see by your eye contact that they are important, that you care about them, that eye contact is their connection to you on a deeper level than just seeing you, that you see them, that you understand, and that you're hearing them. And one of the other critical things, or the takeaways that I would really love to share, is for all of our learners, there's not just one way that we learn. Almost everybody has a primary way that they prefer to learn, but there's almost everything is connected, because we are constantly bombarded with visual and audio and tactile things. And, and while you might have a primary way that you prefer, you also learn by all kinds of other ways. And so please keep that in mind, especially when you're addressing a big group. Pick things that you feel almost everybody will get. So pick colorful backgrounds, make something fun, tell a story, make eye contact, and just remember that everybody learns in different ways, but you can reach everybody by incorporating several of these techniques when you're dealing with disseminating information or just talking to your staff. Okay, next slide. Okay, so one of the questions is, how can I find my own learning style? If you're interested. So doing research for this presentation, I took a lot of quizzes on my learning style. And in all honesty, I was actually kind of surprised when it came up with that. But when I think about it, it really makes sense, because I always used to say I was a visual learner. And I go back to my own story about learning to sight read. I should have known better when I was in junior high school, when I could not sight read. I was definitely not a visual learner. But part of it is I love pictures, and I love to paint, and I do mixed media art, and I do sculpting. And at the time, I didn't realize that there were other things other than visual and audio. And when I found kinesthetic learning, I'm like, yes, this is my group. This is my community. But as it turns out, I'm really an auditory learner. But I have these other preferences as well. So my main way is, again, and I go back to my musical story, is after I heard it, I could play it. And it didn't matter how difficult it was. I just had to hear it first. So really, I'm an auditory learner. And this quiz that is going to be put in the chat is one of the best ones that I found. And the reason I really liked it is because it associates your learning style with your Myers-Briggs personality. So I thought that was one of the most fascinating things. And I'm like, okay, so I was kind of in disbelief at first, but it really, really did it because I am an INFP. And I do believe that my primary way of learning is auditory. If I hear it, I can do it. And that is, I am introverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving. I know I get this a lot. People don't believe that I am an introvert. I am 100% an introvert with extroverted tendencies. I recharge myself by being alone or reading or in a quiet area, but I love being around people. And even though I get very nervous when I do things like this, I still love being here and sharing the things that I've learned and coming to these conferences with an open mind and wanting to share with all of you. So I am an auditory INFP. And my optimal learning situations are I am a big picture thinker where information is presented from multi angles. So I have always said that I am a big picture thinker. What I do is I look at the big picture and the details just fall into place for me. I am able to use my creative prowess to unlock a mystery or translate information. That is true. I love puzzles and I see and I look for trends in data. So when I'm looking at an Excel and I'm auditing things, I look for patterns. Like I'm a big pattern finder and I'm looking for patterns and I can see patterns very easily. And I'm also intuitive thinking and in conceptual situations. So I can conceptualize a lot of things versus rather than seeing them, I just come up with it. But of course, every learner has these areas of struggle. And one of the areas that, and I have been very lucky with the bosses that I've had, is I struggle with not being allowed to use my out of the box thinking. And if you know me very well, you have probably heard me say there is a method to my madness. And I am 100% absolutely committed to that thought because the way I think can sometimes seem very out of the box to some people because I am a big picture thinker. I like to see the big picture first and then the details just fall into place. So if you are a big picture thinker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the other thing is, I don't like to feel judged or stifled, which comes from needing to be and given free rein to be this out of the box thinker and big picture person. So if I don't have that, I tend to not be able to, it's a little more difficult for me to learn in that situation. And if I am unable to talk through or process a problem, that doesn't allow for my own self-expression. And so again, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is I do mixed media art, and that can take up many different forms. And one of the things that I have learned is I never took an art class in my life. I took YouTube videos and I watched them if I wanted to learn to do a technique. And then I just did it with no fear, no frame of reference, never having done it before. But it's because I do things intuitively and I feel them much deeper, and I like to process in a different way that works for me. And so in my sharing this with you, I am kind of stressing that as a leader, these are the things that you will find about me. And this seems very complex. And so think about every person that you interact with will be having the same kind of thing when you need them to learn or take instructions or work on a team with you. These are the types of things that you need to consider when you are trying to lead a team or be on a team or even communicate one-on-one with your staff, that they have a lot going on and there's a lot to unpack. But if you take the time to either observe them, get to know them, get to see how they view the world and what really makes them happy and what makes them shine. And when you see that they're learning faster, do more of that for them. It takes a little effort on your part, but the reward is incredible because you build a confidence, you create psychological safety, you're giving them healthy and making them feel confident mentally and physically by sometimes making sure that they get up and move and taking their breaks and having these discussions. You are helping them be better humans. And in turn, that helps with everything that you're doing to make sure that you're moving your team in the direction that is productive. So this is important, even if it seems maybe a little overwhelming and you're like, I have 12 people that I have to relate to. Yes, you do. But if you really look at this using the VARK theory of visual, auditory, read, write, and kinesthetic learning, pick something, or when you do a presentation or you're talking in a meeting, use some of all of these and incorporate it so that everybody feels included. This is part of being an inclusive leadership, looking at your people and ensuring that they feel included and that they get whatever message that you are trying to share. It is really important and a completely worthwhile investment as a leader. Okay. So impact, we need to make one. Your ability to communicate effectively will have a lasting impact on your circle of influence. And that could be to the people above you and the leadership that is looking at you to solve these problems or to look at things and to come up with new ideas. Or it could be your staff, or it could be your peers. And when you go in and you are communicating to people, you are actually touching people's lives, and you don't necessarily know that you're making this change by making this effort. You are reaching people that you may never thought of, because when your staff goes out to lunch with another staff member from another college, maybe because you took the time to figure out how they learn and how they relate to you, one, that person could become a future staff member of yours, or two, that person will then in turn influence another person. And we can keep this effective, really inclusive type of leadership moving. It is really important that we think about the way our staff members learn. As a university, that is part of our mission, but as a leader, that should also be part of your mission and incorporated into the things that you do on a daily basis, trying to ensure that your staff understand what it is that you want them to do, how it is that you want them to do it, and when it is. And that also helps you because then there's less conflict, less performance issues. It will really and truly help. And it's effectively communicating involves not only delivering a message, but also resonating with the experiences, values, and emotions of those listening. Because while you're looking to leadership, everyone below you or next to you is looking to you. And so it's our job to bring those things together. All right, next slide. So those are my references, and go ahead. So thank you so much. I am kind of at time. I want to be sure that everybody, if there are any questions, I can answer them, or I'll try and answer them.
So I think Brianna has a question. Go ahead, Brianna.
I just wanted to express, Tanya, how much I appreciated this presentation and the delivery of it. It was so well thought and expressed, and it's so relatable. And I really appreciate the time and energy you put into it.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I was so nervous.
No, you did great. No, I
am
get
not
it.
gonna lie.
I wanted to say it out loud because I related to so much of what you said, but I didn't want to interrupt you, but also former artist and clarinet player, totally big picture person. So I was like, oh, we're the same human, but
Yes.
you did great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or any comments? Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And again, one of the things that I really love about being here in higher education is that we all have a chance to influence the future. This is what we're doing. And by helping your staff really think about how you relate to them and how they relate to their own world is going to be critical for all of our success. This is helpful. And I really appreciate the feedback. Oh my gosh. You guys just don't know. I so appreciate it.
So we hope that you all have enjoyed your time with us today. As you know, our goal is to keep the UCR Staff Conference 100% free to attend. We couldn't do that without the generous support of our sponsors, UCR Staff Assembly, LEAD, UCR Human Resources and Employee and Organizational Development, and Schools First. So thank you all to all of our sponsors being able to put this conference on 100% free, not only for our UCR staff, but across the UC campuses. As a reminder, the conference will be uploaded to the UCR Learning Management System in the following weeks. If you do want Tanya's slides, they are down in the resources tab, as well as that link to learn your learning style. So we do have 4 quick reminders before you all hop off. Our first in-person closing session is actually today at 2 p.m. We ask that you RSVP on the website if you haven't done so already. So the link is actually down in that resources tab to go ahead and sign up for that in-person session. We do have lead nominations open for the lead executive board. Again, check out the resources. Staff assembly elections are the first week of April, so make sure that you're applying and be sure to vote when those open. I'll go ahead and drop that link in the chat. And last but not least, go ahead and sign up for the EOD listserv. If you want to learn about more professional development opportunities like this, the EOD listserv will tell you about all the professional development that's going on within UCR. So be sure to check that link out in the resources as well and sign up for that EOD listserv. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you all again after lunch at 1 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.